Good evening, and thank you for joining us to meet the candidates for Mill Valley School Board. Tonight's forum is live streaming on YouTube, and we encourage you to participate in our discussion by submitting questions via email. I'm Jen Moore. I'm the president of the Mill Valley Council of PTAs, and we are thrilled to be hosting tonight's forum. We'd like to give a huge thank you to the Marin County League of Women Voters for organizing and moderating tonight, as well as to our community outreach partners for promoting the event. That would be Mill Valley Seniors for Peace and Marin Promise. This year, the League is celebrating 100 years of following their mission to empower voters and defend democracy. And moderating candidate forums like this is an important part of that vision. To that end, both the League and PTA are strictly nonpartisan and never endorse individual candidates or political parties. So on behalf of both of our organizations, I'm pleased to present the candidates for the Mill Valley School Board tonight. Thanks again for joining us and participating in our democracy. Don't forget to vote. And with that, I will turn it over to League member and our moderator for the evening, Lori Nardone. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hello, my name is Lori Nardone, and I am your moderator for this evening's forum. Thank you for joining us for this candidate forum hosted by the Mill Valley PTA and featuring candidates running for a Mill Valley School District Governing Board. Slide 1, please. Thank you to the Mill Valley PTA for inviting the League to moderate this event. We're honored to be here. I would also like to thank our community outreach partners, Marin Promise and Mill Valley Seniors for Peace. Slide 2, please. With me is League member Connie Siegenthaler as timekeeper. Off screen, we have our question review team, Doug Cooper, Ann Batman, and Greg Brockbank, with Ann Wakely and Nancy Bell providing Zoom support, along with the team at the Community Media Center of Marin. Thank you. The League is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. In addition to promoting voter education, the League advocates for issues and may take positions on issues that arise in ballot measures. I would like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under ground rules set for this forum. In order to ensure impartiality, it is the League's policy that candidate forum moderators and question review team members not live in the voting jurisdiction the candidates represent, nor be actively involved in a candidate's campaign. This evening's forum is being live streamed on the League's YouTube channel and facilitated through our partnership with the Community Media Center of Marin. This event is also being recorded and will be available on our website at marinlwv.org. For broader community access, a gavel-to-gavel production will be rebroadcast on CMCM TV's Channel 30. Days and times will be posted on our website. I would like to briefly explain the roles of the timekeeper and question sorters. To assure our candidates stay within the allotted time, they will see a box designated clock. At the appropriate time, the box will turn yellow, indicating the candidate has 30 seconds remaining for their response. The box will remain yellow for approximately 10 seconds and will then go black. When the box turns red, the candidate should complete the sentence they're on. And yes, it's my job to give them the hook. You may submit your questions to the email address displayed on the screen at any time during the forum, mvsd@marinlwv.org. Our question review team is standing by to review incoming questions. I want to assure you they do not censor the questions. They simply screen them to avoid duplication and to check for anything that might be considered inappropriate. If you do not recognize your question, it might have been combined with other questions on the same topic. Due to time constraints, we may not be able to answer all questions submitted. Slide 3, please. There are 4 candidates running for 2 seats on the Mill Valley School District Governing Board, all of whom are with us this evening. Bob Jacobs, Ellie Abdoli, Joan Hottenstein, and Michelle Cernsich Hodge. Thank you. The candidates have been invited to make a 2-minute opening statement. After that, they will each have 90 seconds to answer each question. To be fair, I will rotate the order in which they respond to the questions. For opening statements, we will begin with Bob Jacobs. Bob, would you please unmute yourself and give us your 2-minute opening statement?
Thank you. I have lived in Mill Valley since 1976, and I've been involved with education since 1968 nonstop. And in this presentation, I am going to emphasize my background because I think it's very important and related to so many things that are going on in the Mill Valley schools. So I was a high school teacher for 21 years in South San Francisco High School, teaching biology and environmental problems. I also taught 10 years on the Zuni Indian Reservation in New Mexico, teaching biology and physiology. I spent 19 years as a life science teacher in the Mill Valley School District. And also, while I was in Mill Valley, I was a negotiator for 9 years for the Mill Valley teachers. Since 2011, I have been a trustee for the Mill Valley School District. I'd like to emphasize some of the accomplishments that have occurred in the last 9 years. And some of these accomplishments occurred before I became a trustee, but they have been maintained. One of the most important ones has been financial stability. We have a 28% reserve, as stated by the financial director recently. We have not had to lay off any teachers. And we've been the only district that's had a significant special CalSTRS reserve of $3.6 million, which we have not had to spend yet. We also have a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's and Moody's.
Thank you, Bob. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there. Ellie, do you want to unmute yourself and give us your opening statement?
Hi, I'm Ellie Abdoli. I am a current district parent, and with 3 young kids, I will be a district parent for the next 13 years. So I'm incredibly invested in the district and a strong proponent of public education, and excited at the opportunity of investing in our public schools and our community. I'm also an experienced attorney, so I'm familiar with and comfortable with having the tough conversations that we need as a district to move us forward. I also am very familiar navigating California's complex laws, funding formulas, and all of the requirements and onus that the state puts on us. I'm familiar with our governing structure, our open meeting requirements, so I will bring a very important skill set to the board that's not currently there. As an immigrant and English learner, I also bring a diverse perspective to the board, which is really important. So when we evaluate our programs and policies, we can make sure we're inclusive of all of our families. I'm committed to making sure that we are providing the resources that all of our children need and their families to succeed. I am so proud to be endorsed by our Teachers Association, our elected leaders, including Stephanie Moulton-Peters, and so many of our community members. And I really attribute that to the fact that I am working to bring everyone back to the table, which, as we all know, in today's climate is so important. So those are the reasons that I'm running, and I'm excited to provide you with more information about myself tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Joan, would you like to unmute yourself and give us your opening statement?
Sure, thank you. I'm Joan Hottenstein. My husband and I have lived in Mill Valley. It's 20 years this month. I've been a volunteer in the Mill Valley School since my older daughter started kindergarten in 2010. I've served on many PTA executive boards at Old Mill, at the middle school, and also now Tam High. The thing that has really given me the right experience for being a school board trustee has been serving on the Mill Valley PTA Council. I just started my 4th year, because that's a front row education on how the district operates, how the budget is developed in the LCAP, how the schools make decisions and react to large and small challenges like a pandemic. I'm running to be a trustee because I want to use that institutional knowledge that I've gained over the years and the relationships that I've built to help make our schools the best that they can be. My younger daughter is a 7th grader at the middle school, and I have an almost 4-year-old niece who will be a Mill Valley kindergartner in 2 years. So I have a very personal investment in our schools, and I will for many years. I know we're going to talk a lot tonight about the issues, so I'm going to share 2 more personal things. I am thrilled to be endorsed by the Marin IJ and the Marin Democratic Party. And even more important than the organizations, I am deeply honored to be endorsed by Stephanie Moulton-Peters, Irvin Carmel, former Mill Valley mayors Ken Wachtel, Andy Berman, and Cliff Waldeck. 4 of the current school trustees, including Leslie Wachtel, who's retiring soon. And a fun fact about my campaign is that it's very green. I have 65 signs that are hand painted on recycled wood because after being a Girl Scout leader and going on trips to the recycling center, I just could not buy plastic signs that are going to end up in the dump. So I have a stack of wood signs that will be ready to pass on to future candidates who want to take the time to go green. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michelle, would you like, yep, you're unmuted. Good.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Michelle Cernsich-Hodge, and as your next board trustee, in collaboration with my fellow board members, I'm going to be setting the direction of the district through policy. This guides all organizational leadership. I'm also going to be assuring accountability, as the only employee is the superintendent, and evaluating this employee as well. The current board has done a great job in hiring an exemplary candidate. Will provide advice, be a resource and a sounding board for the superintendent, challenge strategy and risk factor solutions for the district in an open forum with you present. My 4 areas of experience will strengthen and complement our current board. I'm a uniquely qualified candidate is that I am a 25-year educational veteran, teacher, union president, principal, district administrator, and now micropod facilitator here in Mill Valley. I'm homegrown. I have deep family roots. My parents have been here since the 60s. And I'm not going anywhere and know how to solve problems in Mill Valley. My sisters and I are Old Mill, Park, Edna McGuire alums and Mill Valley Middle School alums, as is my daughter. And I'm proud to say that my sisters and I graduated Tam High. I have research-based thinking that drives my decisions and goal setting. I have an EDD in organizational leadership and a master's in reading. And I know how to use direct services to close racial disparities in Mill Valley, grow relationships in the city, outside agencies, Tamalpais Unified School District. I'm so proud to be endorsed by countless community members, Supervisor Damon Connolly, 7 retired mayors, including Dennis Fisco, Andy Berman, Clifford Waldeck, other city officials, and business leaders, Dave Canepa, Peter Schumacher, and Helen Russell, and finally the Mill Valley Teachers Association, who know that I bring those missing skills to this board as an educational professional to the critical work during COVID and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with our first question, and we'll start with Ellie with that. I'm going to give you a chance to expand on your opening statement. So the first question is, what needed skills would you bring to the board, and what motivates you to take on this challenge at this time?
Sure. So one of the big things is the ability to address issues head on. I'm candid, I'm straightforward, and the ability to just bring people to the table. We have a lot of things going on with our stakeholders, but to bring everyone back to the table and say, let's address what's going on. We have breakdowns in communication. We have a lot of frustration, and the ability to get right into those tough discussions and address them head on, I think is really important. In addition, my legal background is very beneficial because I understand the Brown Act. I understand how we can still engage with our community, with our parents and our teachers in active discussions while still being cognizant of those restrictions. And I think that's really important to make sure that we are allowing for active discussions, that we're encouraging participation in our decision-making process. I'm also very familiar with the Sacramento process of how legislation is made, the types of issues going on at the state level. And that's really important because with looming things like our pension crisis, you need someone who understands California politics. And that's something else that I bring a lot of experience navigating that arena and kind of seeing ahead what issues are on the horizon. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Joan, do you want to unmute yourself and answer that question?
Sure. I think I bring a great sense of balance and a history in the district about getting things done, being a listener, being part of so many PTA boards at different levels, and just being straightforward. I mean, as Ellie said, like we do have some work to do to sort of get all parties at the table and to improve some relationships. But I think that we have such a fantastic foundation. We have amazing teachers. We have parents who care so much. And again, it's really just getting all voices to come together. I have a lot of experience working on boards to get big projects done. That takes a lot of collaboration. It takes listening to people. We did a big turf project at Old Mill where we had to get people who were in complete disagreement. So it took a lot of listening. It took a lot of research. We brought community members together and got it done. And it's been fantastic for the community. As well as we had to make big decisions about updating the library at Old Mill. And that also took listening at several PTA meetings and getting people on board and to collaborate and then getting the job done. So I think that's what I will bring to the board.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Michelle, do you want to answer that?
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned, I have a 25-year educational professional career, and I have walked in all these shoes, which I feel this board can use the operational strengths and experience that I have in education because we have some very strong board members, and we work collaboratively together. We have Marco Pardee, who's really an expert in parcel tax and bonds, and is a media expert. We have Todd May, who brings finance and advisory strengths, and Emily Uhlhorn, who's a volunteer extraordinaire in kiddo and PTA. She has a special ed background and has been involved in schools rule. And Bob Jacobs, who has many years on the board and was a beloved teacher. But I think that what's missing again is someone who has that operational skill set to advise and counsel our employee, the superintendent, in her strategy and plans moving ahead for some very critical issues, certainly this year and the next 4 years. Also, part of my experience is in bringing people together, relationship making, and acting as a liaison between various community groups is something that I also have a strength in. And this is what I hope to bring to the board.
Thank you. And Bob, do you want to unmute yourself and answer that question?
Yes, I bring a lot of experience to the board. I've been involved in so many different aspects of the Mill Valley educational culture. For example, I've been the PTA liaison for all the PTAs except for Old Mill and Edna. I've been with, for example, I've been with Strawberry for 9 years. I've been with the council for 8 years. And that's the place where you learn an awful lot about what's going on in Mill Valley, in the Mill Valley schools. I've been a negotiator for the teachers. I've been not a negotiator, but I've been involved with negotiations with the board, which is been very significant over the years because I've been doing this for 18 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. For our next question, we're going to start with Joan on this one. And this question is, what, in your opinion, is the board's role in returning school to campus? And if you could unmute yourself, good.
Well, I think the board needs to continue what it's doing, working with Dr. Berman and her amazing team. to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to make going back to school safe for our teachers and our students. I know that there's a lot of work already being done to find out what other school districts are doing. There's collaboration between the superintendents at all the schools or all the districts in Marin. And I know we also have parents who are gathering information about what's happening in other places in the country. So a lot of great work has already been going on. Emily Olhorn last night gave a presentation that talked about what the board has been dealing with, and Dr. Berman, in the time between when the announcement was that schools were going to open on October 12th and what happened leading up to the decision to not open them yet, to wait till the end of November. So I think that work has to continue, but I think we're on the right path.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Michelle, do you want to unmute and answer that question?
Yes, I think that, again, the board needs to be providing our superintendent advice, to be a resource, to be a sounding board. And I believe that, you know, what the current plan that now needs to be rethought for November 30th return date, there needs to be some real thoughtful and vocal conversations at the board level, in front of parents, in board meetings, around challenging what the strategies are and looking at what the risk factors are for going back to November 30th. I think that as a board member, with my relationships with various school districts, and my relationships driven by being a teacher leader here in Marin County, being a member of Marin Promise Partnership, and in knowing superintendents in Marin and Sonoma County, is just to go out and information gather, come back, have conversations with the superintendent, be that support, and then have those robust, challenging conversations at the board level to make sure that she's getting all of the board strengths input as we move along, so that this plan is solid and we can deliver for our students and our families.
Thank you. Bob, do you, and if anyone needs me to reread the question, don't hesitate to ask. You want to unmute and answer that question?
When I woke up Monday morning, I was excited about the schools reopening this next Monday. So it was pretty darn devastating to hear the news, which I heard approximately 5 o'clock that day when I talked to the superintendent. There are so many variables with reopening that sometimes the issue gets very confusing. And I am a teacher that was very hands-on, and I understand the importance of being a teacher in person rather than remotely. I have thought about this all week, and yes, we're going to hopefully reopen at the end of November. But if you watch enough news, and unfortunately I watch too much, you'll see that the majority of doctors are forecasting really problems with the virus in the wintertime. So I am not proposing, but I'd like to talk about opening K through 2 as soon as possible, and possibly opening up 6th grade as soon as possible, sort of as a trial balloon, as an experiment. And this might give us an indication of how things are going to go when we open up to the entire schools.
Thank you. And Ellie, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. I mean, I think the board needs to be much more involved, because I will say, as a parent, I was frustrated that the first time I heard about school being pushed back was less than a week out. And to hear that our own board didn't have much more notice suggests to me a bit of a breakdown in communication. And I know that everyone is working really hard, and this is a complicated issue. And, you know, first and foremost, I think that the federal and state governments should have been addressing this rather than leaving it to every school district to try to figure out. But that being said, our district is in charge of figuring it out, unfortunately, and keeping parents apprised of what's going on is incredibly important, and making sure that we are communicating as a board with the parents, teachers, the stakeholders about every aspect of where we are, even if it's to say, we have these 3 balls in the air, we don't know where they're going to land, so we may end up in any of these positions. But give us more notice. Let us know what's going on, where we are in the process, rather than a short-term notice and suddenly shifting plans by 2 months. I think communication is vital when we have so much going on right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and to our viewers, I just want to remind you, you're invited to submit your questions to mvsd@marinlwv.org. So for our next question, we will be starting with Michelle. And the question is, it's a little bit longer. Please explain what equity in education means to you and how we can best ensure that for all students, including students of color or speaking English as a second language or facing disabilities, etc. Wait, oh, I'm sorry. You need to unmute. My bad.
Could you repeat that question?
Yes. Please explain what equity in education means to you and how we can best ensure that for all students, which includes students of color, students speaking English as a second language or facing disabilities, etc.
So what equity in
In
education,
education.
yeah. So what equity in education means to me is that every child is given the opportunity to access curriculum, find school to be a safe place, regardless of their background, color of skin, their socioeconomic background, and address. And the way that that's accomplished, again, at the board level is through policy. And so we need to look at the policy that we have in the Mill Valley School District and evaluate and backwards plan from there and evaluate what we need to do from the teacher perspective on up to craft a policy that will drive the work forward. So for example, in Mill Valley, we already know that our teachers have been doing professional development. They've been talking about race and talking about inclusion. We have county, that Tamalpais Unified School District, that is really leading the way and crafting a resolution. So I would want to see at the board level that we look at these exemplars, we talk to them, we bring that information back and work with our city council here in Mill Valley, who is already along the road towards crafting a resolution and there you go.
Thank you.
You're
You actually
welcome.
didn't finish the sentence, but that's okay. Okay. Bob, do you want to unmute yourself and answer that question?
All students have to survive. All students have to be successful in schools. And I think we've done a pretty good job in Mill Valley. Half of my career was spent teaching mainly schools with minorities. And there are several things which can be done. I think that's what usually is done. For example, I know that this happens at TAM a lot too, is that you set up these programs for tutoring. And they're very good programs, but by themselves, tutoring programs are not going to be, in my opinion, successful most of the time. You need to have more than that. So for a student to be successful, there are 3 things. Number one is if they're having problems, they have to be tutored. They have to be helped in some way with some program. But number 2, you have to get parents involved, their parents involved, and make sure that their parents are offering the proper support at home. And third, which is not mentioned very often, but this is just an opinion that I have based upon observing students that were successful, is that if you can get a person involved with activities, with sports, with something that gets them involved with something beside going to their 5 or 6 classes a day and then going home, I think that you will find that this often leads to success.
Thank you. Ellie, do you want to unmute and answer that question?
Sure. So equity in education for me means providing the resources necessary for all of our students to succeed, which may be unequal level of services. In Mill Valley, we have a very small portion of English learners, students from a disadvantaged background. So in a way, it's almost harder for them to succeed because there's such a small group. It's easy for them to fall in the cracks. We are making strides to address that, but we have a long way to go. We have a giant achievement gap that we really need to proactively address with our schools. We need to make sure, so for example, right now with remote learning, we really need to make sure we are proactively reaching out to our students from disadvantaged backgrounds, our students who maybe don't have someone at home who's assisting them with remote learning, who have special learning needs. We need to make sure that we're really focused on those kids who have the highest chances of being lost in our system. And we need to make sure that they are getting all of the resources. We have an excellent ramp program, but just putting in the time and effort to figure out what do those students need to succeed.
Thank you. Okay, Joan, do you want to unmute and then answer?
Thank you. Equity in the schools for the students means that we give every student the same opportunity to be successful. And we have the LCAP, which is the Local Control and Accountability Plan, which to me is a living document. It changes as we learn more about our students and new programs that are available. We have an achievement gap in Mill Valley. It's gotten smaller over the years, but even before COVID, it was still just too big for those kids who have learning challenges or learn differently. And COVID's increased that gap. And it's also probably thrown more kids into it. I mean, I know my younger daughter has some executive skills that have really become apparent because of COVID and being isolated at home. So I think that we as a district need to do assessments, not only on our students, but also for teachers. The social loss to this and not being in person with their students has been brutal. So I think we're going to need to do assessments for students academically and socially, and then see what programs we can put in place so that all of our students have opportunities to succeed.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with Bob for the next question. And I think that's just going to lead right into the next question, which is, what do you think has gone right and wrong through all this period of remote learning and transition?
Well, there's been major changes since last year. Last year, it was a disaster. There was so many complaints from parents. I talked to countless number of people that were so unhappy with the program. And this year, the teachers got it together, and they've really, the situation has improved so much. But there are limitations to distance learning, and everybody knows those limitations. So we're doing the best we can. There's a lot of positive comments that are being made about distance learning, but I think that there's ultimately a dead end when it comes to this concept. And that ultimately, and then we have to get back to school.
Okay, thank you. Ellie, did you want to, thank you.
Sure. So I think what we are experiencing now with remote learning shows that we were not doing the best we could in the spring. And the fact that we let it continue for so long is, I think, a failing of our district. What we have turned it around to is definitely a success. I mean, I think it is so far from where we were in the spring, but I would have liked to see us having gotten here in the spring, because by waiting so long to really turn around our remote learning, we ended up with loss of students, parents who just gave up because they honestly could not figure out how to do it. And that's not okay. We shouldn't have allowed so many families and children to flounder for so long. So I absolutely commend 100% the remote learning program we have now. I wish we had focused on providing that kind of quality education last year or last spring. Thank you.
Okay, Joan, do you want to unmute your things?
I mean, I don't think there was anybody who would think that this was done well in the spring, but the turnaround has been fantastic. I think there's been tremendous collaboration between the teachers, supporting each other, and that is absolutely benefiting the students. And hopefully that's going to be one of the positives that comes out of this horrible time. I think that another positive is that more parents than ever are really paying attention. I mean, when school lands on your kitchen table for many, many months, parents are really tuned in to what's happening in the classrooms and what's not happening in the classrooms. And now, I mean, I've heard so many positives that people are so pleased about how teaching is going, how you know, there's just, the quality is just so much more robust. A lot of kids are suffering. It is hard. My 7th grader needs to be back in school. She's doing okay academically, but she misses that social connection of kids in the classrooms. I am very pleased that so many people are tuning into board meetings, and I hope that we can figure out a way to keep them, make it so that parents can watch from home, because it's not easy to get down to school and sit for a few hours. So I think that's a positive, and I hope that continues, because we need our parents to just stay tuned and keep communicating. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michelle, do you want to answer that question?
Yes. So what I heard was in the spring, I was not directly involved, but that it was a really rocky road, as everyone has mentioned. But, you know, part of the challenge was having a cadre of excellent teachers who are craftsmen and craftswomen in their trade. And, you know, having to go online was a really difficult shift. And I think it's a testament to every teacher, as well as the administration, in handling this amazing, you know, complete change to their whole way of doing the work with students, that they came out with a full day of synchronous and asynchronous learning that really addresses the curriculum. We've got Kiddo and PTA supporting, you know, PE and music online. It's a joy to watch from my vantage point between 2 3rd graders. And the administration and the board and the teachers should be commended for what they've put together this year. However, I do want to say at the board level, I would really want to counsel and listen to the superintendent around a plan to get K3 kids back, because developmentally being online as long as they are now is very difficult. There is learning loss to deal with. The iReady is showing that we have some work to do, and it's also a lot of time just on a platform that it does not give kids the verbal cues they need to be with a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I want to remind our viewers again, if you want to submit a question, the email, which is on your screen, is mvsd@marinlwv.org. For our next question, we'll start with Ellie. And the question is, how do you feel the Mill Valley School District could help address the high rate of middle school student suicide attempts?
You know, that's a tough one because it is such a pervasive issue in our society right now. And it's so unfortunate because so much of it is, you know, what they're seeing, and making sure we have strong mental health professionals. You know, I was really happy to hear on the board meeting and other meetings where we kept reminding parents about the resources and the counselors available at the middle school. And I think reiterating the resources we have is incredibly important. Making sure also parents have the tools. I mean, that's one of those tough conversations that not all parents have the know-how of how to approach that subject. So making sure not only are we providing the resources for the students, but letting the parents know, you know, the signs to watch for, who they can talk to kind of be coached about how to address the issue, because that is such an incredibly multifaceted issue. You know, we're seeing it arise from stress from school, from friend relationships, from instability at home. So there's a lot of different issues that are creating that anxiety in our kids, and making sure our parents and our students are aware of the resources that the board has, or the district has, is incredibly important.
Thank you. Joan, do you want to unmute yourself? Yep, thank you.
I think that we have to continue open communication and education. I think that our counselors at the middle school have been doing a great job. I mean, I've seen it with both of my daughters and their friends feeling comfortable to go to a grown-up, go to a counselor, and share if they're concerned about a friend who might be giving some cues that something might be going on there. So I think that work needs to continue through the counselors with the kids at the school, but also through parent education, which our district is really good at. Through different organizations. I mean, the PTA does a great job with bringing in speakers, so that, and we'll continue to do that this year, even on Zoom, but just so that parents learn to identify the signs, because who thinks their kid is that kid? But I think our schools, I've been so impressed with how the counselors are handling the situations. So I think it's open communication and education needs to continue.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle, do you want to unmute yourself? Thank you.
Yes. So it really starts with relationships. And I think that it's making sure that our students have access to their teachers, teachers access to students. This is a tough time with distance learning, but being able to provide the teachers time to just create a community with their students online is important. Also is to provide a community of other resources, not only within Mill Valley, but to have conversations in other districts, because this is not just an issue that befalls our middle school kids. So it's about providing children a place where they can feel safe to share their concerns and what's happening. And often that does happen in the way that they can express themselves in writing or in a curriculum again. But more importantly than that, it's being able to have the continued education that PTA and Kiddo does provide to parents, and to access Marin County Office of Ed resources. But more importantly, to find ways, I think, at the board level to empower children to find solutions for this, because I think that's an opportunity there.
Thank you. And Bob, do you want to unmute yourself? Thank you.
Number one is workshops for teachers every year, especially emphasizing the cues. A lot of my, not a lot, but there have been a group of my former students that committed suicide. And when talking to other students about what happened, most of this, it didn't happen in middle school, it happened in high school. But in talking to students about this, there were always cues. And so if the teachers know the cues, if the students know the cues, this will be very helpful. In Mill Valley Middle School, I found, and I assume it's still true, in fact, I'm pretty sure it's still true, is that students are not afraid to go to their counselors if they sense that something's wrong. And that's a very healthy situation. And as far as I know, there's been a lot of cutting that goes on. I don't know whether it's been recent, but I know when I was there was cutting. That's what happened. That's the closest to suicide that happened at Mill Valley Middle School. But it's very sad. But the one thing that you can do is you can be prepared for this. You can be knowledgeable about the subject. And there's no reason why students cannot be knowledgeable about the subject also. You could probably do the whole thing in one period for students each year, and they would be educated. They will listen to stuff like this too. And if they overreact, that's fine. But the point is that they have to be knowledgeable and they have to realize that there's a potential problem.
Thank you. Okay, Joan, our next question starts with you, if you want to unmute. Okay, it's a little bit of a long question. What is needed to combat systemic racism in curriculum or by other means? What is needed to promote and teach diversity among all of the students? Do you have any innovative ideas or practices that you think would be particularly effective? It's all kind of woven together.
This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. I think that there has been a lot of good work that started with adults in Mill Valley, and some work started in the schools. Just this week, there was an equity workshop for adults so that we all get educated in what racism looks like and how to confront it. But I think in our schools, there are simple things we can do. Books in classrooms with people, with kids that don't look like, or mostly white children. That's an easy one to do. I did some work with a friend over in Marin City at the MLK Bayside School, where we did a fundraiser in Mill Valley to buy leveled libraries for all the classrooms at MLK. And those libraries were carefully curated by their teachers and librarians. And I think we can collaborate with them to get their suggestions for books that we can put in all of our classrooms, certainly K-5. I think that would be an easy first step. We can look at what programs we already have in our schools, like Immigration Day at Old Mill, which is like just so amazing. But how can that be tweaked so that it expands beyond immigrants coming through Ellis Island to let other stories come into it? My younger daughter was born in Vietnam. Obviously, Vietnamese immigrants did not come through Ellis Island. So how to tell those stories in a gentle way that the kids just learn more. So when they get to Tam High, they're just better prepared for people who don't look like them.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle, do you want to unmute yourself and answer that?
Yes, and can you share the question again?
You bet. So I know it was a long one. Okay. What is needed to combat systemic racism in curriculum or by other means? What is needed to promote and teach diversity among all of the students? And do you have any innovative ideas or practices that you think would be particularly effective?
Okay, so to combat systemic racism, as a board trustee, we must develop committees and start along the path of a resolution, because we have to have policy that outlines how we're going to do this. I think that we, again, as a board trustee and in collaboration with board members, need to look at exemplars. You have Tara Topier and her board at Tam Unified School District. They have non-negotiables for how their teachers work with children. And it really does come from our teachers looking at their own unconscious bias, the training that I mentioned before, our teachers have already done. But they're the leaders that, in concert with their administrators, are going to drive the work, and we need committees to get started. In relationship to curriculum, all that will be part of a plan, and I am hopeful that the superintendent has been in conversations with her committees that have started this work. There's been a lot of other agendas on the items on the agenda. But in terms of innovative ideas, it's really, as a board member, we need to be reading about white fragility and how to be an anti-racist and setting an example for the district.
Thank you. Okay, Bob, do you want to unmute yourself? Thank you.
So I was talking with these 3 Asian girls once, students of mine, and I asked them about racism. And I'm not even sure what the context was, but I asked them about that. And it's very important to understand that they were, all 3 of them, extremely popular A students, extremely popular kids. And what they told me was and they used the word racism, but they said sometimes we get teased about our eyes. And I still remember that story. It happened about 10 or 11 years ago. And they looked sad afterwards. They never looked sad, these three. They were always happy. So was this intentional? I don't think so at all. But that's the type of behavior that will occur in a place like Mill Valley. I had one boy that I thought was racist through all the years I taught there. So these kids are not inherently racist, but they need to be educated. So as a board member, this has been on my mind recently. I am going to push to develop curriculum. I'd like to see what the high schools do first and work from there, because each age group will have its own very specific curriculum. But the kids must be aware because they just don't get it. And that's one of the problems.
Thank you. Ellie, do you want to unmute and answer that?
Yes, as someone who was the target of that type of racist joking, I don't think it has any place in our schools, and is terrible, and is, I think that is racism. I don't think we get to say that it wasn't intentional. It has a profound impact on our students, and that's exactly the type of attitude and behavior we have to be clear as a district that we will not tolerate, whether it's racial, socioeconomic. I mean, we cannot allow for comments like that to be acceptable at our school or be brushed aside. We must directly address it. We must be clear that that has no place in our district. So I think for starters, it's making sure that we have people on the board who truly believe that it is necessary to combat systematic racism, who value the programming to train our parents and our teachers and our students to spot these issues. I think that's incredibly important. To Joan's comment earlier about the Immigration Day celebration, our students speak over 22 different languages. We are a wealth of amazing different cultures and experiences, and celebrating that is the direction we should be taking as a district. We should be embracing the diversity we have.
Thank you. Okay, for our next question, we will start with Michelle. Different direction. Can you please talk about the district's financial situation, including its reserve? What do you see as the key financial pressures facing the district in the next few years?
So by my reading of the financials, we are in as Bob mentioned, in a very good position. We have overall almost a 50% reserve if you combine all the various categories. So we are well set in the short term here to address whatever needs we have. Now, in terms of looking forward, what I would want to do with Michelle, the financial officer, is to take a look at projections, the LCAP projections beyond this. We were going to do a 3-year plan, then we had COVID, now we've got LCAP. So there really needs to be work done to look forward and see what our risks are and what strategies we have for dealing with our pension liabilities. And bottom line, what we know is in research that the number one determining factor of our students' success in schools are their teacher. So this is why I, as a board member, would be a huge proponent for looking at how we're going to attract and retain our best teachers, and what financially does that look like, and budget for that moving ahead. Thank you.
Okay, Bob, would you like to unmute and answer that question?
I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to repeat myself. We do have an incredible financial officer, by the way. And yes, we have this really nice reserve, and I don't know whether this has changed this year because I haven't heard from Michelle about this, but we were actually number one in Marin after the last contract, which is terrific. Doesn't make the teachers rich, but comparatively speaking, we've always had this philosophy of being in the top third of the county when it came to benefits and when it came to salary. And we've maintained that for many, many years. I'm going to say at least 20 years. Our reserve is 3.6 million for pensions. I believe it was 2015 when we voted for that, but I might be off by a year. And we're the only district that I know of, and I've sort of checked on this in Marin, that has a reserve, a special reserve for pensions. So we're in pretty good shape now, but who knows what's going to happen from the state. If we remain a basic aid district, we'll probably be okay for a while, but there'll always be this possibility from the state that things will break down. The system, from what I've been talking to, okay, that's all.
Thank you. Ellie, would you like to unmute and answer that?
I have nothing but praise for the incredibly sound financial state that our board has put us in. I mean, it is truly incredible for a school district right now. We have the highest AAA rating, and we have a healthy reserve, and we have been able to weather this COVID storm better than most other districts. And I really commend the board members for being so forward thinking in that. I mean, there is a looming pension crisis that many of us have been reading about and looking into, and you know, until it's addressed by the state, which we don't know when that'll be, if at all, it's going to fall on the districts. And so many districts are going to be making really big sacrifices. And for our district to have been looking ahead at that, we're also being prepared for, you know, whatever happens with the parcel tax. Hopefully it passes. But for our board members to be so, have put us in such a great financial state is just incredibly commendable. And I thank them all, because this is exactly the time where things could be really dire for a lot of districts. And we are fortunately in a great position.
Thank you. And Joan, trying to answer that?
Yes, we are very fortunate that our budget is just so carefully planned, and that we do have a healthy reserve, which actually is a little bit lower. Our general reserve is 29.61% of the total budget, which is about $14 million in the reserve. And it's there for economic uncertainties like a pandemic, or if the pensions don't earn their targeted 7% of their annual goal. We have our supplemental parcel tax expires in June of 2021. So we need to go back out and for another parcel tax, which I think the earliest we can do that is March of 2022. But we are in very good shape, and some of our neighboring districts are not. So we're very fortunate. This year is particularly tricky because of the county suggested that all the school districts cut their reduction of property tax by 50%. Fortunately, Mill Valley homes seem to still be selling briskly. So, but they've also reduced donations to kiddo and to PTA. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. And we have additional costs due to added staffing because of COVID, and new costs for cleaning and PPE to make sure that our schools are as safe as they can possibly be to bring our teachers and kids back to school. So some challenges ahead. We have a 10-year plan for facilities upgrades. So again, challenges.
Okay, so to answer Bob, actually I want to remind people that they can send questions in to mvsd@marinlwv.org. And then we'll go with Bob, and I'm going to roll right into bringing the kids back to school. So the district is currently planning to physically have students return to schools where families do not feel comfortable returning to in-person school at this time. So what steps would you suggest to minimize disruption to these students' education so they can stay with their same teachers as they continue in distance learning? Long question. If you could unmute, Bob, sorry. Thank you.
And I just quickly want to say something about the last question. I fought Michelle on the reserve when I was a negotiator for the teachers, and she will tell you that. So I've learned a lot since I've gotten on the board. Regarding this question, parents are going to be uncomfortable until we have a vaccine and until this virus disappears, if it does disappear. One of the things that will probably have to happen, and this is very unfortunate, but that when parents decide whether to send their kids back to school or keep them on distance learning, this is not official, but this has been discussed, is that parents are not going to have the choice to switch again this year. And the reason for that is there is just too much disruption. If students are going in and out of these programs, it affects the class size of teachers, and therefore changes will constantly have to be made. We can't exist at that level. So that's going to be the biggest problem. There is going to be anxiety. There's nothing that we can do to eliminate that anxiety, in my opinion. And we're just going to be, everybody's going to have to be faced with a choice of deciding whether to distance learn or return to school.
Okay, thank you. Ellie, do you want to answer? Yep.
So unfortunately, I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis to some extent, because we know that there are teachers who may not be able to return to in-person and may be choosing to be remote. So some students actually are going to be with their teachers if they stay remote, others are not. So until we are closer to the point of seeing what options we have in terms of the number of students who want to return November 30th, the number of staff, teachers that we have, I don't think that we can, assure anything, but I do think that, we're a relatively small, nimble district. We should try to, these kids have gone through a lot. I see it in my own kids. Minimize disruptions as much as possible, but we recognize that it's a pandemic, and I know that everyone is working so hard to figure out how to minimize disruptions. I know yesterday, last night's board meeting, one of the discussions was the number of students that were going to be disrupted led to the decision to not return to in person. So I understand it's complicated. I do think that we should try to minimize disruptions for the sake of our kids.
Thank you. Okay, Joan, do you want to answer that?
I agree with Ellie. I think it's right now, I mean, this announcement was just made on Monday to delay schools. And I think that a lot of work and communication is going to have to happen between now and early November to really get a plan in place for how to keep kids, how to get as little disruption as possible, and hopefully keep them with their classroom teachers. And, just like with the decision that was just made, that will depend on teachers coming back to the classroom, and the number of kids that decide to stay in distance learning. I think there were some surprises in the numbers that created new challenges. But I know also in the next month or so that a lot of research is going to be done and looking at best practices and what other districts are doing and how they're doing it successfully, and whether they're doing it successfully, as other districts have opened across the country. So I know all eyes are on the subject, because making this as easy as possible for our kids is a top priority for everyone involved.
Thank you. And Michelle?
So Lori, could you share with us that question again?
It was a very long one. Yes. The district is currently planning to physically have students return to schools where families do not feel comfortable returning to in-person school at this time. What steps would you suggest to minimize disruption to these students' education so they can stay with their same teachers as they continue in distance learning?
Well, so this again, in terms of my work as a board trustee, I really want to challenge whatever strategy or plan the superintendent is going to come up with. So I need to understand what the superintendent is thinking about. If we want to keep students in distance learning with their same teacher, then we need to look at who's doing that. And we know that the Larkspur School District has started this plan. And I think that we don't have a lot of runway. So board members, and that is where my operational expertise comes into play. I think that the superintendent's going to need us to be out there doing research, providing our ideas for how to move the plan forward. If we have a shortage of subs, which we heard last night at the board meeting, and I know because I myself have seen the packet, and it's all done by hand, so you can't be a sub and just go online and apply. That you know, we need to think this through carefully, have a decent plan, but also message out, communicate out, and make sure parents know all along the way what the risks are, what our strategy is, and then when we endorse that plan, this board needs to own that plan and be accountable for it moving forward.
Thank you. Okay, Ellie, we'll start with you for the next question. What is your attitude towards stationing SROs, also known as school resource officers, on campus?
That's my position, is that we should be using all of the other tools in our toolbox before we ever go to an SRO. I really strongly believe that our mental health, especially with our younger kids, there are so many other reasons for those types of disturbances. It may be emotional health, it may be issues going on at home, and we should have counselors and others who are addressing the root of the problem, stepping in to address these issues rather than law enforcement. We want to be a welcoming, safe community for our students, and particularly looking at our students of color, making sure that they feel safe. In the elementary and middle school, you know, obviously if there's a threat to safety, that's one thing, but for the most part, we need to make sure that we're addressing the root of the problem through our other resources and the other tools that we have, rather than turning to an SRO.
Thank you. Joan, would you like to unmute? Yep.
Sure, there you go. I think that in my experience in the schools at the high school and the middle school, primarily with SROs, is that it can be a very positive thing also. I know, for example, after the bomb scare at the middle school, there were police on campus for several weeks, several officers, and that was very reassuring to kids. And I think that even without that kind of a crisis situation, that having and again, I mean, we're lucky. We live in Mill Valley, and there, I don't believe, not that I've heard recently anyway, that there has been a negative situation of having a police officer who's getting to know kids, and kids are getting to know them. And when this question first came up to me a couple of months ago, I just thought about when the Parkland shooting happened, and there was actually a call not only to put armed police officers on school campuses, but also to arm teachers. So I think to go to, which was ridiculous, of course, in my opinion, but to go to the other extreme and not have officers on campuses at all. I mean, Officer Nick at Tam High, all the kids know him. I think that for the most part, he's a positive influence on the campus. So I think that there are pros and cons, but I think for the Mill Valley School District, that it's not a bad thing.
Thank you. Michelle, do you want to unmute? Thank you.
Yes. So a school resource officer is by training there to be a resource to students, to get to know students and provide a relationship. As certainly at the middle school, it's critical during that time in development the developmental time of a middle schooler to see a police officer as a resource. So that the design of the program is to support students, not to be a police officer on campus that is disciplining students. And I think the Mill Valley School District has done an excellent job in providing an SRO at the middle school. He's also a great role model. He's Black. And so I, at the board, would be arguing vigorously or listening intently as to what would be the reasons for letting go of this program. It also, in my experience as a principal, where I had police officers come as peers dressed in uniform, it's a great way for children to understand that our police, and in this time in our society where they're in the spotlight, to realize that most of our police officers are there to serve our communities, there to help and support. So I think it's a really good program that I would argue to maintain here in Mill Valley School District.
Thank you. And Bob, do you want to unmute?
Sometimes you can answer a question pretty quickly. The answer is no, no, no. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, Mill Valley, as just from my experience as a teacher, there was just no need for this on campus, to have an officer like this on campus. The 2.5 fights that they have each year at Mill Valley Middle School are a joke. They're not the real thing at all. So I think that the teachers or the vice principal, I'm sure, could handle the situations that occur at the middle school. I realize that we do not have a secure campus, that people can come in from all directions. The 8th grade teachers are sort of, it's suggested that they keep their doors closed because they are facing the street. If I was teaching on the south side of the school, I would not keep my door closed. It's just probability here. I mean, you can have a whole police force on campus, but do you really need it? Does every school really need it? And I feel as if our resources can go in another direction. It's nice to have somebody supervising. It's nice to have somebody a supervisor, but not a police officer.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are coming up on our last question here. And here we go. So we're starting with Joan on this one, so you can unmute. Are you open to the idea of combining school districts with Sausalito and Marin City school districts in the near future? And what is your experience with the community in Marin City?
I am not in favor of combining those two school districts in the near future, partially because I have been pretty involved over there. And I have a lot of respect for that community. It's a unique and just very special place. I highly recommend, if anyone has not listened to it, listening to the podcast, Nice White Parents, because it sums up exactly why our school districts are so different. I think that Mill Valley has enough challenges of its own right now that we need to get through that before we could even talk about merging the two districts. But I also believe that if there is a desire for the Mill Valley Sausalito district to merge with us, that the impetus of that should come from them. It shouldn't be the Nice White Parents of Mill Valley telling them how we're going to come in and save their children's education. I think our districts are just too different to do that. I think we need to build some bridges, which is happening in a lot of ways. I started a tutoring program with Mill Valley 8th graders a couple of years ago that we continued. Those kids kept going back every week right until COVID started. It's a little bridge, but it was a way to build relationships. So I think that we can do a lot more of that. I think there are community things that we can do. Field day, 6th grade does field day. We could invite their middle schoolers over and create teams. Anyway, small things, but can make a difference.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle, do you want to unmute and answer that?
Well, this is a topic near and dear to my heart because I know the Sausalito Marin City school community well. I've spoken to board members on both on both campuses, and I also had a conversation with one of the artists on our depot. Those beautiful murals. It had been defaced on the back, and she and I had a conversation just about this. So it really comes down to perspectives, but I want to bring it to children. We really need to think about what's best for our children and what's best for those students who come to Tam High. And they really, when they get to Tam High, they do not have the relationships. They don't understand the community. They're at a disadvantage. So I think that we have a responsibility as a board to look at short-term, midterm. What about looking at combining the middle school? What would that look like? Brainstorm ideas for how to bring those middle schoolers to our middle school to develop the culture, the friendships that would make them successful. In the short term, merging, they are unifying. They're trying to develop their own community, and I think that it's premature. But when you think of children and the fact that we all go to Tam High, I think that as a board, we need to look at the educational necessity of doing that, as well as some efficiencies that we could look at moving forward financially. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bob, would you like to unmute and answer that?
I'd like to unmute and talk for about 10 minutes on this subject, please. Here's another no. I'm going to use as an example the reservation, and I think that this example is exactly the same thing that would happen in Marin City. And I thoroughly agree with Joan on this topic. White man is going to come and save the Indians. And many teachers go there with that attitude. And the Zuni people, I taught high school there, they're very well aware of that concept. And what they want to do is they want to be successful, and they want to be the leaders of that movement to be successful. And the exact same situation would hold true, in my opinion, in Marin City. I'm not familiar with the community at all, but I just know that I think it's an insult to go to them and say, why don't you come to our school? We will solve all your problems. We will make you successful because you can't do it yourselves. And that's pretty much was the attitude on a reservation. And I think that that would be the same response from a community like Marin City.
Okay, thank you.
Minutes.
Ellie?
I do not support merging the two districts. Marin City does not want to merge, and we have to respect that. I mean, you would be taking a majority minority district and throwing them into a much larger district. They would be swallowed and lose so much of their identity. I think programs like what Joan was suggesting that she created with the after school program, bridging and building relationships is key. That's the type of effort that we should be making to help our students build relationships between the two districts, but not merging the districts. I also think that there are ways that we can lend support to the district. One of the suggestions that I heard was, if we were to make one of the schools in Marin City a magnet school and, draw students from outside of the Marin City into that school. And I think that would be great to see Marin City schools thrive rather than making them somebody else's schools. So I think we need to create programs to help them thrive, not swallow them up.
Okay, thank you. I think that is all we can fit in today. So this concludes the question portion of the forum. Before the candidates make their closing statements, I want to share some key information about this year's election, particularly on how and when you can vote. We are fortunate to have an outstanding elections department in Marin, headed by Registrar of Voters, Linda Roberts. Be assured that the counting of ballots for this year's election is being conducted with the highest level of security, honesty, and integrity. Election Day is officially November 3rd. You have until October 19th to register. After that, you will have to go to the elections office to register and vote in person. Due to COVID-19 and the need to ensure safe, accessible voting, the state of California has implemented new expanded voting options. Slide 4, please. All active registered voters in California will automatically receive a ballot in the mail. Vote by mail ballots were mailed out to Marin County voters on Monday. You may already have yours. Voting by mail is the safest way to vote during this pandemic. Vote by mail voting is underway with several options for returning your completed ballot. You can send it through the US mail, postage paid. Mailed ballots must be postmarked by November 3rd and received at the elections office no later than November 20th. You can drop it in any one of the 12 secure drop boxes located around the county. A list of those drop box locations is included with your ballot. Or you can hand deliver it to the elections office at the Civic Center or to any polling place once they're open. Slide 5, please. For in-person voting, if you are voting in person, note that as a result of recent legislation, there are fewer polling places for this election. Your assigned polling place is printed on the back cover of the voter information guide and sample ballot that you received in the mail. Be sure to check this before heading to the polls. Your assigned polling place may be different from past elections. There will be 29 consolidated polling places open for 4 days from October 31st through November 3rd. Masks and social distancing will be required, and a limited number of people will be allowed inside at any one time. It is also possible to vote in person at the Elections Department in the Civic Center during regular business hours from now to Election Day. So make a plan now and vote safely. For more information about Dropbox and polling locations, you can go to marinvotes.org. Thank you. At the end of this forum, there will be a slide listing several additional websites we recommend for more detailed election information, including votersedge.org. And now the candidates will make closing statements of 1 minute. We will go in reverse order of the opening statements. So we will start with Michelle.
Well, thank you, Lori. So as your new board trustee and in collaboration with my fellow board members, I pledge to set the direction of this district through policy. I'm going to assure accountability, increased communication, and I'm going to be providing advice, be a resource and a sounding board to this superintendent. I'm going to challenge the strategy and the risk factor solutions that she brings to us in an open board meeting where I'm hoping you're going to be participating. I have 4 areas of experience that will strengthen and complement this current board. I'm uniquely qualified. I'm homegrown. I have research-based thinking that drives my decision and goal setting, and I know how to use direct services to close our racial disparities. So please join endorsers that include countless community members, Supervisor Damon Connolly, 7 retired mayors, and business leaders Dave Canepa, Peter Schumacher, and Helen Russell, and the Mill Valley Teachers Association, and know that I bring those missing skills to the board as an educational professional. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going backwards with this list. So Joan, if you would unmute yourself, you are next.
Thank you very much. Right now, I know the issue that's on everybody's mind is getting back to school, but I do want to remind everyone, for all of us, that we have many other issues that impact our students, including the achievement gap, assessing and mitigating the learning and social impact of COVID on our students and also on our teachers. Continuing to manage the finances so closely. We have, again, that big facilities upgrade plan coming up. introducing anti-racism education into all grades and improving communication. I think that my history and experience and my relationships in the district and community will enable me to step onto the board and get to work right away, which is important because we have big issues on the table right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ellie, do you want to, yep, you're unmuted.
I would bring a fresh perspective and the personal investment of being a district parent to the board. You know, when you come to me and you have the discussion about iReady, well, I use that for my kids too, and I'll know what you're talking about. So I will be personally navigating the same policies and programs of our district as you. I'm going to understand and relate to what's going on in the district, and I'm going to be familiar with our parents and our teachers on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's really important. The issues of this year really demonstrate the importance of having someone who's personally impacted and understanding what's really going on at our school district. In addition, I am going to be transparent and get everyone back to the table. I really believe in clear communication, and that is my promise to you, is to make sure that no one's caught off guard, that our stakeholders, our community, everyone knows where we are in the process, what our goals are, and how we're aiming to get there. So I dedicate to you an investment in our future. Thank you.
Thank you. I know a minute goes by fast. Bob, do you want to unmute? Yeah.
I'm running again for the Mill Valley School Board because I'm confident I can continue to make a positive contribution to the outstanding Mill Valley schools. And the Mill Valley schools are outstanding. The energy and enthusiasm that I had in the classroom has not disappeared. My experience as a teacher, negotiator, and trustee will enable me to advocate for the excellent programs that have characterized our schools. Being a former teacher for 42 years at all levels of education in America, I offer a unique perspective. I have the experience, knowledge, and insight to make intelligent decisions. I will ask the right questions. I would appreciate your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. You're all fabulous. This concludes our forum. Thanks to the candidates for participating, to Connie Siegenthaler for timekeeping, our question review team, Doug Cooper, Ann Batman, and Greg Brockbank, and to Nancy Bell and Ann Wakely for Zoom support. And special thanks to the team at CMCM TV. We could not have done this without them. A video of tonight's forum will be posted on the League's website in the next few days. Slide 6, please. For more information about the election, the candidates, and ballot measures, visit the League's website at marinlwv.org and click on the Voter's Edge logo in the middle of the page. Here are some additional recommended websites. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And most importantly, thank you for voting.